Hey guys, it's me Mr. 250 and welcome back to Umineko. I feel like this might be another battler scene, I don't know. Looks spooky. The eerie sound of the wind and rain. Once again I hazily regain my consciousness on top of the bed. The finger that the witch had bitten off was still attached. Ow. I didn't say it was all an illusion, just that it was still attached. After all, the pain and the teeth marks as though the witch had bitten it were still there. And yet, the window, which I had supposedly smashed, had been fixed as though it had never been broken in the first place. How can I escape this creepy room? Why am I locked up in this eerie room, all alone? I want to get out. I have to get out. Let me out of here. The door was sealed with a firm chain. I could open it a crack, but only enough to peek out into the corridor at best. It would probably be hard, even to just get a fist through it. I like that 3D rendered chain picture. The window won't budge either. It was no better than a barred prison window. The bathroom didn't even have a window. The only thing that I could get out of there was the water that flowed on if you turned on the tap. No matter what I do, I can't think of a way out of here. Being shut up in a place like this makes me a true prisoner. Unless someone comes from outside to save me, I won't be able to get out for all eternity. In that case, can't I just call for help? Yes, the tiny gap I can make in that door must exist so that I can call for help. But can I make the words come out? Earlier I tried to call out for help, but for some reason the words couldn't escape my mouth. I might have made some kind of mistake. I might have just lost my voice in my haste and confusion. I'll open the door and make that crack appear one more time. The warm light of the hallway flowed in, making the darkness of the room stand out all the more. Though I couldn't hear any voices, I did feel something peaceful. I'm sure everyone's in the room at the other end of the hallway, chatting happily about something. If I can just call out, surely someone will come to save me. Holding back some indescribable fear, I tried yelling once more. But the result was the same. It was like trying to yell underwater. All I did was get out of breath, unable to call out in the slightest. Even though I could say as much as I wanted if I just grumbled to myself inside the room. Whenever I tried to make my voice reach outside, I choked and was unable to say anything. I understand. My body isn't the only thing locked up inside this eerie closed room. My voice is too. Thinking that I could use some other kind of sound to call for help, I tried opening and closing the door violently, making the chain rattle. It does sound as though it's making a noisy clanking sound, but it's surely no good. Even this sound is being locked inside this closed room. No matter how harsh a sound I make, I'm sure it'll be quieter than a leaf falling by the time it reaches the other side of the corridor. I tried using the hateful chain that sealed the door to make a sound to call for someone, but that only deepened my despair. This chain, that's insane. Even though just a second ago it was a stiff chain that looked like it was used to seal a monster away. At some point, it had transformed into a normal chain lock. This changes everything. Now I can just undo it from the inside. I tried to undo it, but the chain wasn't long enough for that while the door was still open a crack, and I couldn't get it off. Of course. Calm down. I gulped, and calmly closed the door. Then, when I saw that the chain had slackened enough, I touched it with my finger to make sure. When I was little, I hated chains, because I could never get them undone right. However, that was a long time ago. Now I can undo something like this. Anyone could. It's easy. I had a vision of the demon who had locked me in this room, using this as a trap to give me hope, and then make me despair even more. But I had pushed those thoughts aside for the time being. I undid the chain lock, and the chain dangled there right before my eyes. Now, there's no lock sealing this door. Please don't torment me anymore, and just open normally. Slowly, the door opened. I'd closed the door in order to undo the chain, so the warm light from the hallway had been cut off. If I open it again, what if that warm light is gone this time? I was even afraid of that. However, that was just me over-imagining things. Slowly, quickly. I guess this is normal for a door. As the door let out an annoying creak, the exit from this cursed closed room finally opened. I did it! Even my cry of joy was strangled. But that doesn't matter anymore. All that matters is that I can get out. I poked my head out and looked left and right down the corridor. The warm corridor. I could sense people having fun at the other end. Everyone's right there. Let's go, right now. Oh, but it was just a dream, my friend. At that moment, something cold and heartless crushed my throat. It was as though an iron loop had been fastened around my neck and pulled on hard from behind. No, not as though. Without my knowing, at some point, a thick metal collar had been fastened around my neck. When did this happen? When I turned around, I despaired even more. Out from the inner side of the door I had just opened, a thick chain had extended and attached itself to my collar. I pulled on it, but it didn't even budge. When I shook it, the whole door creaked. What the heck? The chain that connected to my collar was attached to the inner side of the door. Yes, the same vanishing chain that had secured the door a short while ago had suddenly become a chain holding me in place. That's insane. That's insane. Dang it, what's going on here? I pulled with all my strength, trying to tear the whole door off. But I already knew from repeated experiments that it wouldn't even budge. I'm sure this chain will disappear once I go back inside the room. But it will never let me leave the room. Though it had appeared to revert to being a normal chain lock, nothing had actually happened. The fact was that the chain lock still bound me to that room. Ugh. Ah! Tears flowing down my face, I pulled with all I had. It was completely useless. No matter what I did, I'd never tear it loose. And I wasn't even permitted to call out for help. I felt a confused anger at how the demon had mercilessly made me think I'd escaped for just an instant. But no matter how much I yelled, no voice came out, and no one on the other end of the corridor could hear me. Then I noticed an odd stain on the wall of the corridor. It wasn't a stain. They were letters traced out by a finger that had been covered in blood. Those letters, which looked like they had been drawn in blood, answered my biggest question. The chain lock must be set. You're allowed to unset it, but it must then be reset. Unless it is set, this exit of yours will be unusable. Is that a puzzle? I instantly understood the meaning of that ominous message. Then I tried it out and understood completely. When I returned to the room and reset the chain lock, the binding around my neck disappeared. When I undid the chain lock again, that heavy feeling around my neck returned. In other words, I cannot leave this room while the chain lock is still unset. In that case, why don't I just set the chain while outside the room? I undid the chain one more time. The collar and chain appeared around my neck again. I stepped out into the corridor and closed the door behind me, leaving only the slightest of cracks. I stuck my hand through that crack, grabbed the dangling chain and tried to reset it somehow. Yep. So we somehow have to figure out how to do that if we want to get out of here. Even though it was so easy to do from the inside, why is it so hard to do from the outside? The gap needed to be wide if I wanted to manipulate the chain well. However, that made the chain too short to reach. To make the chain reach just a bit further, I would have to close the door a little bit more. But if I do that, there won't be enough of a gap to fit my hand in. Of course, it was perfectly natural. Chain locks are meant to be done from the inside. But they'd be completely pointless if you could set and unset them from the outside. That's why the length of the chain is specifically chosen to prevent anyone from setting or unsetting it from the outside. Then, can I use some kind of hard and thin tool? If the gap of the door is just a finger width across, it's more than enough for the chain to reach. If I could just bend a wire hanger so that it fits through the crack, and work the chain with that. That's right, there's a closet just to the side of the door. Could there be some hangers in there? Found one. Oh, thank God. A single cheap looking hanger like one you might find in a laundry room was hanging there. Really? I'm pretty sure that when I last looked a short while ago, nothing like this was in the closet. Ah, who cares? Quickly, quickly! I twisted the wire hanger, bending the end with the tip around. I formed a loop at the end to grab at things with, making for a sort of burglar's tool. I then dashed out into the corridor again, and closed the door almost as far as it would go. My wrist could never pass through this. However, if I close it this much, the chain should have extra length to spare. And this crack is large enough for me to stick the hanger through. Now it's just a matter of technique. I'll definitely be able to do it if I try enough times, I'm certain of it. Ha! 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 It's harder than it looks. But the chain is long enough. It isn't impossible. I'd finally gotten my hands on the one way to escape. It was hard, yes, but it was theoretically possible. If it's possible, I'll be able to get it out. I'll be able to escape from here. At that moment, I felt a heavy weight on the far side of the door. It felt as though someone inside the room had pressed their forehead against the door and was drawing closer. And she, the witch, had laughed. Then I felt a powerful and strange force on the wire hanger. Is she trying to grab it away from me? Yeah, right. Like heck I'll let go. Like heck I'll let my one key out of here get stolen while my guard's down. Fortunately, I'd stuck my wrist through it so that I wouldn't drop it if my hand got tired. You won't be able to snatch this out of my hands. The witch on the other side of the door watched me and laughed. Then, I noticed something weird. I looked at my left hand, which I had pressed against the door to hold it in place. And between the fingers of that hand, I could see something red. They were red letters. I realized immediately. At some point in time, even more bloody letters had been drawn on the door, and my left hand had been covering them up. Still fighting against the vice-like strength of the witch beyond the door, I moved my left hand to the side. Where that hand had been, bloody letters had indeed been drawn. It was as though someone had predicted that I'd struggle this way from the very beginning. A message from the witch to me. It is impossible to set or unset the chain lock from the outside by any means. All tricks done from the corridor had been sealed by the red letters. No way. Definitely have like a closed room murder kind of happening right here, aren't we? There was a sudden terrible sound, and the force that had been pulling on the hanger was suddenly released. Then when I pulled it out and looked, I lost all hope. As though it had been hit by the acid of the room's darkness. The tip of the hanger had burned and bubbled and melted off. Now it's pitifully short. This can't be used for anything. It would be useless to search for a substitute. All schemes to close the chain from the outside have been sealed. Dang it! Dang it, dang it, dang it! I threw the remnants of the wire hanger against the floor, faced the hallway filled with a warm light, and called for help. However, I just choked, unable to speak at all. Everyone's just down the corridor, and everything's peaceful there. I can't hear their voices, but I know. I'm sure they're all having a good time playing cards. Please, someone notice. Someone, save me. Ah! Oh, good, Battler's gone insane too. This time it wasn't the witch's voice. It was the happy voices of everyone else, which I could hear from the other end of the hallway. Someone come over here and save me! You guys are playing cards, stop laughing so much. George slammed his last card down, ending the game with his victory once again. Everyone gasped in unison. The cousins' room was filled with laughter as they enjoyed their card game.
やっぱりジョージの兄貴が持ってたか。憎い。スペードの6が憎い。
バートラのダイヤの8もエグかったぜ。ああ、もう悔しい。
ジョージお兄ちゃんすごい。また勝った。
そうだよ。また僕たちの勝ちだね。
Maria couldn't really hold her own in an all-out battle. So she had teamed up with George, which was why she was celebrating his victory. Cannon winced and let his cards drop to the table. The game of sevens that Cannon and the cousins had been playing had been a fierce battle. Normally they would take things easy since Maria was there, so this sort of game was rare. Cannon had started taking the game seriously, unwilling to lose. So George and Battler had responded and the battle had grown fierce. Unlike Battler, who was carefree enough to enjoy it whether he won or lost, Cannon's mood changed drastically with every victory and defeat. It was less of a dislike for losing, and more that he just wasn't used to playing. He wasn't used to trading a few wins and losses with his opponents, so he took even losses within a game seriously. Since he had resolved a win and had unfortunately challenged the veteran players George and Battler, the result was plain to see. As Cannon slumped his shoulders, Jessica slapped him on the back.
惜しかった惜しかったでも楽しいぜ。本気で戦うのはね。
本気だろうとそうでなかろうと、結果が負けでは何の意味も。
とんでもない。本気で戦った結果の負けならすがすがしいもんだぜ。いい加減に戦っての負けじゃ、本気出してたら勝ってた云々で未練タラタラでしょ。
そうだな。全力を尽くしたやつは言い訳しない。そして結果に関わらず爽やかなもんさ。
そうだね。そしてそういう人間が一番怖いのさ。そこから必ず何かを学び成長するからね。
確かに僕は臆病だから何も学ばなかった。だから未だに未熟なんだ。
I am furniture, so it is useless to dream. Because he had rigidly believed that, he distanced himself from everything and shut himself away. However, during that time, Shannon had undergone many life adventures. And now her hand is resting on the door separating furniture from humans. The old Cannon would have only seen this card game as a way to pass time. However, the new Cannon was now capable of gaining something new from this experience. That could probably be called growth. When time passes, furniture does nothing but rot. Being able to grow is a privilege given only to humans.
一緒に遊んでくれてありがとう。西とか書いたり忙しかったんだろ。付き合ってくれて本当にサンキューだぜ。
いいえ、僕も楽しかったです。いえ、これが楽しいことなんだって理解できました。僕を無理に誘ってくれてありがとうございます。
私たちはさ、もっともっといろいろな、そして君が知らなかったものを探しに行こう。それでさっきの話だけどさ、ギターとか、いや別に無理にとは言わないけど、その
きっと難しいでしょうね。
まあね。でもさ、そこは丁寧に教えるし、練習は私も付き合うから。まあ言うほど私も上手くないんだけどね。
At first, Cannon was scared that he might make a complete fool of himself if he touched a musical instrument for the first time in his life. It was because he knew that screwing up like that would make him feel bad. However, Cannon was starting to learn.
初めてで下手なのは当たり前です。それから逃げてたら永遠に何も学べない。何にも至れない。
そうさ。だからこそ人は上達を実感して面白くなるんじゃねえかよ。私だって最初はさ、右手と左手が別々に動くってだけでもう全然ダメだったぜ。でも少しずつコツが分かってくるとさ、だんだん当たり前になってきて。
僕もその境地に至りたいです。そのための道の一つにお嬢様との音楽活動があるならぜひ。
本当に？
はい。きっと最初は不出来でお嬢様を失望させてしまうこともあるでしょう。でも本気でやっての失敗だったらそれは清々しいものに違いないとさっきお嬢様たちに教わりましたから。
照れるぜ。
お嬢様のことをもっと好きになりました。あなたは太陽のような人なのに 僕が目を背けていたから。こんなにもずっと近くにいたのに、それに気づけなかった。
じゃあもっと好きになってもらえるように頑張っちゃうぜ。いや
Cannon's serious and competitive words were more than enough to make Jessica shy. However, Cannon's expression unexpectedly clouded.
僕がお嬢様を好きになれる理由はだからわからなくて辛いです。
何が？
お嬢様が僕を好きになる理由です。お嬢様と違い、僕は何も照らしてない。今だってお嬢様に照らされながらその背中についていってるだけです。そんなみすぼらしい僕をお嬢様が好きになる理由が何一つ。
そんなことはないぜ。カノン君にだっていいところはいっぱいある。
恥を忍んでお聞きします。お嬢様は僕の何が気に入られたのですか？
Cannon hung his head. He'd never learned anything, so he had never been able to take the lead with her. And yet it made him sad and frustrated that he had always been the one-sided recipient of her affection, and could do nothing but respond to it. Jessica was lost for words. After all, compared to the reason that Cannon had started to like Jessica, Jessica's reason was a lot more vague. She had heard Shannon talking about her love with George. And at school, she and her friends had always talked about relationships with boys. There would have been nothing strange about a girl fascinated by the idea of romance developing an interest in a nearby number of the opposite sex, or member. However, if you put that into words, it would be misinterpreted to mean that any nearby boy would have done just as well. I mean, there aren't too many other boys on the island. However, at this moment, her heart was filled with nothing besides her own feelings. She really did like Cannon, and she truly wanted to fall in love. As a result, they might end up together, or they might not. However, if she reached that result without holding back, she could accept it no matter what it was. That's why she was able to become serious about her emotions. However, she couldn't find the right words to tell Cannon this. When Cannon saw Jessica bite her lower lip in frustration, he finally realized.
バカだな、僕は。僕のどこが気に入ったんですかなんて質問。本当にバカらしいと思ったんです。自分に本気じゃないから、自分のことさえ理解できてない証拠なんだ。そんなことをお嬢様に言わせようとするなんて、僕は最低。
そんなことないよ。女の子だって男子に告白されたら最初に聞いてみたい質問だもん。自分のどこを気に入ってくれたのって。
それを相手に尋ねる時点で、僕そんな未熟者に気に入ってもらえるようなものがあるわけがない。
いや、そうじゃなくて
Jessica panicked, trying desperately to explain how she felt. However, Cannon was calm. And then he spoke.
だから僕がお嬢様を好きになるように、お嬢様にも僕を好きになってほしい。そのために僕は自分を変えていくことにします。今はまだこんな自分をお嬢様に好きになってもらえるとは到底思えません。でもいつか必ず。
ああ、絶対素敵なカノン君になれるよ。私がベタベタに惚れちゃうくらいの素敵な男の子になれる。私はそれまでずっと一緒にいるから。時間なんていくらでもある。
ただ時間が そうないのが悔やまれます。
What do you mean? Get stabbed?
家具の話をするとお嬢様が悲しまれます。
Yeah, I think that's a good spot. We'll stop there. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. That was fun. It definitely seems like that beginning part with Battler was trying to set up a closed room, and, you know, the red blood text was the red text, obviously. So it seems like there's something going on with the only way. You have to figure out how to open the chain from the outside without opening the chain from the outside. I don't know if there's an answer to that, but yeah, it's kind of weird. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time for some more Umineko. Bye!